Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner, Classic Known Classics. This is episode number 3524, Doubleshot 34. Hang on. Didn't I just do this twice already? Yeah, this is correct. Yeah, it's basically... Yeah, it's 3524, Doubleshot 3418. So... Wait, did I... Oh, I think I did. Hang on. I'm trying to think. Wasn't it in our comic corner? I think I did upload it. I don't know where it is though. Anyways, so pretty much with this particular episode, we're going to discuss a lot of issues of Superman in Action Comics. For Superman, we're starting with issue 188, and we're going to stop at 221. You're like, wow, that's a lot of issues. Well, we're skipping over at 183, 197, 202, 205, 207, 212, 217. The reason why for 193, 197, 202, 207, 212, 217, the reason because all of these other issues are reprints. For 205, because I've discussed already in another review. So, I thought I did upload this one. Hang on. Okay. Because I keep thinking basically I did review these two trades next to me. Was it yesterday, I think it was? Yeah, I'm looking at these two trades next to me like, I could have sworn I reviewed these ones already. And I could have sworn I did upload it. I could have sworn I have. Maybe I did. I thought I forgot. Hang on. Huh. Weird. I'm thinking I may have to review these two again because I'm looking at these two trades next to me because I could have sworn I reviewed these already. I know I have, but maybe I accidentally deleted the videos. That probably what happened. Yes, I'm gonna have to review those again next video. Not this one. I decided this one was gonna do these Superman issues. So. For 188, basically, for these issue, so... I'm just so distracted by these. Oh, where were those? Because I'm getting distracted. Okay, so for 188 for Superman, it is him on another planet dealing with people who try and just train people to be a full assassin. It's a full graphic novel for this one. Yeah, and 189 basically is just, well, it's just basically this thing called Krypton 2 where supposedly Krypton is destroyed once again. And Krypto hates him. Yeah, I don't Bender writes these two issues. 190 is like, yeah, Superman deal with the elements. And fighting a creature an alien known as Amalek. Yeah, and this is a guy who does return after this. You're thinking, where is Return? Yeah, I can return for 195. Yeah, he returned for 195 to have another fight with. This is an issue by Jim Shooter. Yeah, Jim Shooter with this one. And then you have Man of Steel, Prisoner of Demon. What is Demon, I ask? It is this weird, like, terrorist organization that Superman deals with in just this one issue. It's a really cool issue. 192. Yeah, the flashback is Superman as a brat. Yeah, and the story it's basically another story. It's called The Brat of Steel. Yeah, it continues over 184, which is, well, the reason because 183 is a reprint. So they deal with that and the apparent death of Lois Lane and Lex Luthor in this all timeline. 195 is, well, there's a backup story, Superman right now, which I read already. That was from 133. Yeah, Almanac returns once again to do with Superman in issue 185. In 196, yeah, it's like, okay, so the opening story is a reprint. So the Star of Steel is basically just, yeah, it just, this is Superman falling for an actress. And who was the writer of this one? Isle Bender once again. Yeah, he writes a lot of these ones. Skip 187 because that's a reprint issue. For 198. Yeah, this one's like, oh, the real Clark Kent. Yeah, this guy who allegedly was the real Clark Kent and Superman came from space. He just flew there, kept him hostage, and had decided to flash a light on his chest like, oh, he's Superman. Except the device he used was basically a projection. It was not an actual X-ray device. Yeah, and the guy who claimed to be Superman, he was just he was a robot. Yeah. A robot. And then it's like, yeah, and then back up story, just Superman's powers goes out of control. 199 is the first ever race between Superman and the Flash. It is the first of several races between two of them, and the race ends in a draw. Yep, ends in a draw. Jim Shooter writes his own with Kurt Swan on the artwork. Interesting they had this happen in the 190th issue. Why couldn't they say it's 300? I don't know. Because get this. So, issue 200 of the series is an imaginary story where Clark, or basically we have this brother of Superman, who only appears in this one story here. Yeah. So we have an Elseworld story where Superman's brother becomes Hyperman. And yeah, it's a weird one with this Earth like 200 stuff. Yeah, it is pretty much just an Elseworld story. It only exists as one issue. 201, basically, it's like, yeah, it's one of these ones where I guess that DC, Marvel had the similar idea of like, oh, let's have an issue where our lead character abandons his identity, then by the end of the issue, the whole thing in this one is basically he just leaves the planet because of his powers. Yeah. Not the first time anyways. But it was a really cool story. 202. Reprint issue. Moving on. For 203, first one in a while for this book, we actually have 3 stories. We have Clark Kent's Biggest Day, Black Magic, and When Superman Killed His Friends. The thing with these ones, they have 3 different writers. Clark Kent's Biggest Day, it's written by Laura Duffman. Jerry Siegel, who's the co-creator of Superman, developed Superman's Black Magic. And When Superman Killed His Friends is written by E. Nelson Bridwell, who is sadly no longer alive, but he wrote some really good stuff here. Like, the guy was a fantastic writer. Just a shame that stuck with her. So the Black Magic story here, that's a reprint. Yeah, the whole thing of this one is basically, it's a vision, basically. Superman gets infected with Red Kryptonite. Red Kryptonite hints a very what issue goes across of what goes on there. And the whole thing is basically dealing with, like, the opening issue is like, oh, long hair gang. Yeah. kind of weird though. Second story was a reprint, and then we have the whole thing of like the LL stuff, which is the whole thing of like, oh, Lori Lamontis, Lyle Lang, and Lois Lane. No Lois Lane. Do we have Lori Lewis, who dies in the story, and the first appearance of Q Energy. Yep, Q Energy. Something can kill Superman, and it actually does appear after this. It actually popped up in some issue of DC Comics Presents, an issue of Green Lantern, and a limited comic collector's edition. Yeah, the second story is a reprint, Fortress of Fear. It just, a beam of Fluto just turns the Fortress out to against Superman. 205, issue discussed already, thanks to Talos Phantom Zone. 206, yeah, where apparently he's accused of killing a hero named Dynaman, which, yeah, and moving on from that because Becker's story is reprint. 207 is a reprint story. Yeah, whole reprint issue. You're like, wow, 2 reprint issues in just a short span of time? Yeah, my guess is the issue story wasn't ready, so reprint. So, and then we have the Collar Criminal. Frank Rubens does this issue. Yes, Frank Robbins, as in the same writer who co-created Man-Bat. Despite the fact Neil Adams told me that he did all Man-Bat stuff. Now, I did ask why Frank Rubens basically credited for co-creating Man-Bat. He said he has no idea because he claims sole credit for the creation of that character. That's according to Neil Adams. So, the electric collar thing, it's just really weird. Not worried about the backup story, it's a reprint. 209. Clark Kent Monster. Yeah, it just separate the clone of... It's like cloning Superman for an issue. Where Clark Kent's, like you said, being something that basically Spider-Man is in present day. And then we have Clark Kent's Phony Death. Yeah, where he poses a guy named Dr. Astler. Yeah, and it just... The whole thing of this issue is like, oh, Clark is getting tired of Lois Lane rejecting him, so he just assumes anything just so he can go out with her. And Neil Adams is the cover for this one. Yes, the late Neil Adams is the cover for this one. Then we have Super Artist. That's the opening issue of 211. And by the way, I was going to stop here, but because basically it was going to be about 17 issues, I choose like 19 issues. I decided to extend it for a little bit more. Beyond this a little bit. Yeah, so... And the name of the game is Superman. This one basically... I would say this one particular, like, oh, electric chair thing. This kind of sounds like something that they I think they may have, this is maybe a story, maybe there was, because I think in the story, this also kind of happened in Smallville, with the whole, except that one was basically testing love, not the whole thing of Superman. The opening story is like art school stuff. Skip here to 212 because it's a reprint, I think it's a reprint issue. Going straight to 213. The whole thing with this issue in particular is like anything. It's just a vault. Yeah, it's sort of featuring Lex Luthor and someone called Mondaru, who is a old enemy of Legion of Superheroes. Yeah, 214. This week's appearance by Metallo, except the whole thing is basically like him haunted by ghosts of his past, which are Zaurum. You're thinking, who the heck is that? Yeah, it is one of the gods of Olympus. This actually be his final ever appearance in comics. Yep, this issue in particular. I'm about to soon discuss his debut later. While I discuss action, but this would be his final appearance. Why in the world would that be? I have no idea. Yeah, Metallo. It's of course basically the Silver Age version, and Composite Superman, and he's a character who showed up in the pages of World's Finest, and in the case of this issue in particular, this will be his sole appearance ever in the pages of Superman. And the whole reason, now the thing is, he's mostly a character associated with World's Finest. I guess that Cary Bates drew him in here because he's a Superman villain, so why not? Yeah. Going straight to 15. This is an imaginary story where apparently, like, the whole thing is like this monster killed Lois, but she comes back by the end of the story. Yeah, and the whole thing of this one is basically the first appearance of Earth 215. Yeah, it only appeared once, and it's an Elseworld story, and it has nothing to do with Earth 1 Superman. So moving on from that one. 216. I love the cover here by Joe Kubert. It's awesome. Where it's like a giant soldier with like a machine gun in front. Yeah, this was really cool. Soldier of Steel. I love the cover for this one. And by the way, this is written by Robert Kanigher, a guy who wrote a lot of war stories. Perfect choice to write this one. Good on basically DC for having read this one. The whole thing is like, oh, Dr. Han kisses a guy called Johnny, and he becomes like a giant. Yeah, he becomes a freaking giant for this soul story. It's a really cool one. 218. Yeah, where, get this. So, yeah, we had this woman who thinks she's the wife of Superman. And we had this kid, he's got the powers, and then it's discovered by the end of the story, this super tot is not a real person. It's Mixie again. Yep, Mixie is here. Yeah, and exposed, and by the way, the woman who claimed to be Superman's wife, yeah, that turned out to be a fake, created Mixie just to play with Superman. And by the way, Superman figured out he was him when Super Tot chipped over a pot of coal. Yep. And Kryptonese, and basically had him recite his name backwards, which was the only way to get rid of Mixie. It's kind of a weird thing with that one, but that's kind of what it is. 219. Where it's like, yeah, it's like, the whole thing with this opening story is like, yeah, where Clark becomes like the editor of the planet. It's like he goes to his own office, like, wait, Harv, what are you doing in my office? Like, I was told to come here today. And he goes to see Perry. It's like, what's going on, Perry? Oh, here's your new office. But Perry, this is your office. Yeah, I'm basically going in for city council. And it turns out this is all done by aliens. It's a quite hilarious issue, but this kind of would happen also in present day. You know, Perry would want to enter in politics. Joshua Williams picked this up by having run for mayor. Which, I like the opening story. The backup story is just some guy called Vercall just heatwave Metropolis. Yeah. Let me try something here. I forgot to update one more thing here. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's do it. Yeah. And moving on to 220. 220 is basically a body swapping issue where Flash is Superman and Superman is the Flash. And it's written by Jim Shooter. Okay. And by the way, the cover artwork is like the late Carmen Infantino. I'm like, good choice because basically he's a longtime Flash artist. I mean, this is the guy who created Reverse Flash, which I thought was really cool. This only was the second time they had Flash and Superman in the same comic, which, really cool, this one. Then we have, let's have basically the backup story where Superman's fat for an issue. Silver Age. And then you have Superman deal with the general in the opening story. But yeah, the backup story by Cary Bates. But really interesting issues. Unlike before, which I didn't think any were interesting, these were quite cool. Yep. So I'm going to give these Superman issues pretty much all basically like a 9 out of 10. Very much an improvement. Now moving on to Action Comics, starting with 337. Now, for Action Comics, this is going to be quite interesting. So Action Comics, I'm going from 337. I'm going to stop at 359. And like, wow, that's like 23 issues. Yes, but I'm skipping 347 because of the reprint. So, not as much as Superman, but... So, now, like in the case of the previous time I discussed Action Comics, I'm only discussing the Superman stuff because pretty much all the rest of this point is just Supergirl backups. So, I've already reviewed the Supergirl backups already. We're just reviewing just the Superman stories for this one. Just Superman ones. So, the opening story is like, yeah, rags to riches. Doing some thieves. And we have a guy who's an alien called Muto, who tends to do crazy with Superman. He actually is not a one-shot villain. No, he actually returns the following issue, and then he pops up in Superman. Yeah, it's a quick 2-part story involving him. Yeah, but also involves Superman XX. Because I'll involve with like time travel stuff for this one. Moving on to 340. 340, oh, this is a very noteworthy one. So, very historic issue, this one. So this is the first appearance of the Silver Age Parasite. Well, I think this was the original Parasite, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Actually, this is the original Parasite. Yes, Maxwell Jensen. This is the first appearance of this particular character. Yep. And he would be here for quite some time. Yeah, he'd been in comics for 20 years. And this issue was written by Jim Shooter. Yep, love the cover here. Now, you're probably thinking, was this issue collected at some point? Sadly, no. And he actually returned in Action Comics 361. So it took him a couple years, but I love the fact we have a brand new villain. Like, the purple skin here. Like, you look at this character, oh, this must be Rudy Jones. Nope. Completely different character. Yeah, this is Rudy Jones' predecessor as Parasite. This is what inspired Darkseid to create Parasite in the pages of Firestorm. For 341, we have Superman versus Clark Kent. Okay. Yeah, and we have Jack Sawyer, some escaping Phantoms on this one. For 342, where Superman fights off an alien called Grex. Who, another one of these aliens who does return, but he doesn't appear very much. He's not returned again to issue 417, so it takes a little while for him to return. Yep, and it's written by Jim Shooter. Yeah, Jim Shooter does a lot of these issues here. 343, him being punched by a giant hand, who turns out some guy called Errol the Immortal, who was pretty much killed off this and more Superman Revenge Squad. And then we have these multis Superman is a nightmare. Guest appearance probably when Batman shows up here, and basically this is just Superman exposed to red kryptonite. Yes, red kryptonite. And then we have a story called "Today Candid Camera Unmasked Clark Kent's Entity." Yeah, Candid Camera. Yeah, this is an old gag. I tend to joke as my work. Smile, you're on Candid Camera. By the way, some of my coworkers have no idea what the heck Candid Camera is. It's a joke, and I do this basically on the intercom, like, smile, you're on Candid Camera. And here's the thing: none of my coworkers get the joke. They don't. They have never heard of Candid Camera. I think like 1 or 2 people basically responded to it. Everyone else, nope, they just ignore it. Yeah. For 346, where some insurance guy basically tries to guarantee his death for Superman. But skipping over 347 because it's a reprint issue. So straight to 348. 348, of course, fights a guy called the Acid Monster. Yep. And he is a one-shot character who his only appearance was in Essential Superman Encyclopedia, but he's a one-shot villain. Day 49, Superman versus a frickin' mummy. A guy called Dr. Kryptonite. Yeah, he only appears as one story here. It's like, yeah, this probably was supposed to be Mento, but they decided to switch out for somebody else. And then we have Stone Age Superman. Yeah, Superman in the Caveman times, which was really interesting. Yeah, Paris, and I thought this issue was quite interesting. 3451. This is debut of the character I just mentioned with Alf Room, which basically discussed the last appearance already. Yeah, it's basically a guy who Superman fights over the course of 3 straight issues. Yeah, he fights him. Yeah, it's a 3-part storyline where he fights him, and then he just pops up in pages of Superman, where he just retires the character. There's a joke variant cover of like, there was a variant cover created for modern day. We replaced him, which is it with Captain Marvel. Yes, the cover where apparently he's like fighting. I think it's supposed to be him, but he's replaced briefly on the cover by Captain Marvel, who didn't appear in the book. Yeah, I saw this online. Like, really? And then we have Superman fighting a guy called Captain Credible. Yeah, and he himself is just a one-shot character who just appeared in this one issue. Like, it's a very skinny kid who thinks he's basically invincible. 355. Or Superman fights a guy called the Annihilator. Yeah, and he actually appears at over the course of these 3 issues, he deals with the Annihilator. Yeah, another 3-part story. Yeah, I'm like, okay, interesting. Yeah, I also deal with the guy called Annihilator Jr., who is just the adopted son of Annihilator. Yeah, it's like they finally it becomes. Yeah, and then we have 358, where Superman's accused of murder, but the story will continue over in 359, where he's cleared, and that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it there. I gotta say, just like in the case of Superman, some excellent issues. And I gave these excellent issues roughly a 9 out of 10. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, notifications. Next up is Combiner 01. Okay, next video. Bye.